Back for part 2, working on this holiday project, the roller organ. Working on the guts and fixing some parts today. A little cameo from the poof. She doesn't show up often, but she had school off today. In this episode, we're going to start going through the organ and removing the organ from its external shell, determining what parts need to be made, and beginning to make them. I hope you'll join us and watch part 2. And don't forget to go back and watch part 1 if you're curious what the heck it is we're working on. Guys, like all my other videos, this is a chapter video. If you want to see a certain chapter or a certain part, just skip to it by going to the bottom of your browser or your YouTube window and selecting the chapter. Otherwise, watch the full episode starting now. Here we go. Well, one of the first things I wanted to do, getting back to this for the second time, is check out the lid. Now, I know that middle section's supposed to be nailed down. I see those nails, but of course I also see this. The back flip-up portion would have had operating instructions for whoever was going to use this organ. And I think those got varnished over and torn off, probably back in the 60s. My dad messaged me and told me that he actually took a crack at finishing this thing in the 60s, back when he was in high school. Yeah? I want to give you a quick peek at these little nails and wooden strips holding the glass in. Pretty cool old stuff. Anyway, he had tried to refinish it and ended up polyurethaning it, although he regrets not just rubbing it down with linseed oil or something like that. The graphics that are on the outside of it were the original graphics, but they were traced out and stenciled and reapplied. We're going to try to get the internal portion of this grinder organ out, the real organ, out of the outer shell. Okay, little poof. This is very old and never been taken apart. It's from 1901, okay?
When's 1901, 10 years ago?
That's 122 years ago, okay? So we need to try to be respectful of this thing, because we want to be the only ones that take it apart again for a long time. There's 4 screws holding it into some little ledges on the inside of this outer case. These are like nice old flatheads. We'll make sure we're using the right size screwdriver for that, so we don't cause any damage that doesn't need to be caused. It doesn't appear this part of the organ's ever been out, so that's pretty cool. Although I could be wrong. And of course the poof takes a crank at it as well. Gotta get her hands on this piece of history. Turn it. Okay, here's a... Yep. Lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. Yeah. On most things. Oh, wow. Okay.
Daddy,
what, honey?
Did they burn that part or paint it? Like, did they burn?
Like I've said before, the thing about projects with kids are you have to slow down and let them ask a lot of questions and goof around a little. She sure did love helping out on this, though. She said she wishes school was like this, because it's easier to learn things when you get to see them up close and touch them. I can totally relate to that. Well, we're trying to get it out of the box, and I am taking off the screws to this crank handle, because obviously that's going to hold it into the box. But this whole internal portion should lift out if I'm very careful about it.
Like those,
oh, maybe it's not.
electronic screwdrivers back then?
No.
Are you sure no one's have touched this in 122 years?
I know Grandpa Steve painted it once. I was hearing. Okay, here we go. I'm trying to keep in mind that I don't really know what I'm going to see in here, and I don't want to damage anything. So even though it feels like I could get it out here, I don't want to put all that weight on the mechanics. So I did decide to tip it over and push it back, and that helped a lot to get it out, and probably the safest way I could figure out. Yeah, that's pretty special, huh?
Oh.
Okay, we're going to set this to the side over where it won't hurt. How dirty it is.
Is it sort of like that thing that you pump up and down for the fire, sort of?
That's exactly what it is. That's what's so cool about it. It's a little human-powered machine.
Are you going to have to remake this piece? Because it looks like it's very broken.
It's very broken. It just goes to that piece right there.
So...
I don't really want to set this on the bellows. I want to actually flip it over because the top's pretty sturdy other than that broken crank dealing.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
It looks like
they're not all cracked and blown out. I don't know how it's possible these bellows are still in excellent shape. We are so lucky. Okay, it makes sense now. It basically is supposed to hold standing air up here.
Oh,
and then this...
It's exactly like this thing.
It's exactly like
it's split into 2 parts.
Right.
Into 2 parts. And, oh, look. They're moving every time you move the the crank.
That's exactly right.
It's like feet.
It's like feet?
Yeah.
On the
Like
organ?
walking.
Yeah, it's walking, yep. I love having the poof with me. She makes all these projects more meaningful and so much more fun and entertaining, and she's just a blast when it comes to fixing things. Ah, there's a rogue stink bug. You found your way all the way in here, did you, little friend? Sorry to wake you up. I know it's the middle of December. I'm not gonna hurt you, buddy. You know I save all of you guys.
How tiny are stink bugs? Pretty interesting so far.
Well, we've got it out. The bellows look good. They're okay. They're a little dry, but I think they're fine. They fold like folding paper. It's very interesting. That wooden piece back there is really going to have to get addressed, though. I guess what we're going to just have to do is take it off. I'm just hanging this up while I'm working on it, putting a cleat underneath just so it's not resting its weight on two kind of delicate pieces. The poof did an excellent job helping get those screws out. And then, of course, we removed some broken portions and pulled it all off of the actual organ. This is a great little piece, and I just kind of want to glue it, and I think I'm going to just glue it. Although, if I can, I'll throw a 23 gauge brad nail or two in there, because they're like little needles. They're called pin nailers, and that would really help put this together. But I'm going to try just gluing it first, now that I know it's a very accessible piece.
So you're going to have to take that entire piece out?
Well, we finally got that part off, and it's probably just worth wiping it down and getting all of the weird funk and dust that you can't get off when parts aren't removed. So we'll wipe that off and get, I don't know, decades of yuck off of this organ. And now it's time to put this piece back together. Now, of course, I want to shoot 23 gauge pin nails into it to hold the wood together, but first I want to try just gluing it and clamping it for a while. This wood is soft enough that it could pop at any of the other grain lines, so I'm trying to see if I can do it without the nail first. So we'll see, but of course we got to get the lid off that glue. It just freezes like water. Once figuring out how it fits together and where the grains are going to click in, I'm going to just apply glue. And of course I'm going to apply it to both sides of the breakage because I want to make sure that everything is completely saturated. So I'm just going to use a little swab here to get it all over. And I sped this up because it took quite a while, surprisingly. It's almost there. Oh, that's it right there.
I don't need my coat anymore.
It's warm, huh?
Yeah, and I'm wearing long sleeve too. And then you let it dry.
It holds really good. Ooh, it's perfect. Clamped up pretty good there. Looking pretty nice. It locked in pretty tight, so that's great. It broke in a way that it's just jagged enough that the pieces can still lock together, and that's great. I think I'm going to wipe off any excess glue, but try not to go too aggressive here and see what we come up with. That's great. So I got those nails popped off, and I can finally roll this little guy over again and take a look at the bottom here. I want to take a look deeper inside of whatever this valve is or these holes in the bottom are. I'd put that blue tape on there before, but as you can see, it just peels off because of whatever oils or whatever treatment was put on this wood. I'll probably have to wipe this whole thing down to chill it out, but that may just be some seed oil. Of course, this dump valve's coming off too. I just cardboard taped it up as it was for the short term. And of course, there's this other leather thing that I actually think is correct. I've learned a little more. I'll share that in part 3 when we get to repairing this. And the poof wants to know where we're going to get some replacement parts for this thing. Yeah, this side needs one. These?
Yeah.
We got to make one. Indeed, we are going to make one. So we've determined it's pretty lightweight wood. I highly doubt that it's pine, but pine's what I've got right now, and for the sake of this repair, that's fine. This would be easy enough to make a new one of in the future when I figure out the proper species of wood. I've taken down all my measurements of the existing valve, and I'm going to just translate that onto some wood and make a new one. Clamp it hard. Real hard.
I'm going to fall off my stool if I clamp it any harder.
So, as you may or may not know, I like Japanese saws because they cut on the pull instead of the push. Nothing wrong with a push saw, but I tend to like that pull cut, especially for smaller projects like this. It just gives me a lot more control, a lot straighter line. You just get a better feel for what you're cutting, I think. I'm trying to put in guidelines here for my thickness so I have something to track. That way, as I run the saw down through it, I at least have something to guide me of where the blade should be, and I don't walk off course. So, like you can see here, kind of a funky cut. But we're going to get down through it. And I'm not still 100% sure if I love this piece or not, but it turned out pretty good, as you will see. I'm not sure if this is what we'll use or not, but for now, it's nice to have something mocked up, because this is really the only wooden piece I think I'm going to have to fabricate. And if I have to refabricate it, that's no problem. But for right now, this is looking pretty darn good. Ta-da!
Perfect.
It is pretty good. Now, I would have loved to cut this with the table saw, but I don't have any power down at the shop, and I'm not going to try to run cords for that, so it's nice to cut something by hand. And as you can see, that'll work. I'm going to pull out the part it attaches to because I wanted to see why this one screw wasn't fastening well. Probably going to have to pack out that hole before I rescrew it. I may even have to just remake both of those wooden parts. I'm not sure yet. Point. Somebody decided to add these little brass screws and put this thing on.
It's stuck.
It is stuck. There it goes.
It's like it's glued to it.
Indeed.
That's awesome.
Oh, there's more valves up in here. I see. So I've been looking at these wooden dump valves, and then of course these leather valves that are exterior and then more interior, and trying to figure out how this thing works. And I'm coming around to some realizations, and I will share those realizations on part 3, because it'll be easier to show what I've learned than to just talk about it. But this thing is actually pretty brilliant in the way that it was built, and it had not ever struck me that the bellows worked the way that I'm discovering that they actually worked. It's really a brilliant process, and that will be for part 3.
Because we have quite a...
Right now I'm going to stick the actual organ back into the box just to protect the bellows so they don't get punctured laying around in the garage.
Adios.
I'm obviously going to have to reinstall repaired pieces and find a way to install the refabricated pieces. Really, this is going pretty good, and I'm starting to get some great ideas, some that I will share in part 3. I need a little piece of wire for a spring, so I'm going to have to start thinking about that. But if I have all those parts here, I ought to start being able to put it together and make it start sounding like something. Of course, still going to need to do all the felts on these and adjust all of the arms for striking the cob properly. I learned something really cool about the cobs. So like I was saying, this is kind of like an old MIDI device because it spins around. Think of that as a MIDI song and all the little dots going around on it. And as it spins, it's hitting these little forks and making the note come out. So it's very, very cool. But what's awesome about this is I've noticed if you watch the crank, it bumps the cob thing back and forth, and it extends the shaft out and makes it longer and longer. That backside's just fine right now. See how it keeps sticking out longer and longer? And in fact, the whole frame of this is on a set of springs because it's adjusting it. Now watch this. There's a lot of torque on it right there, so something's really loaded up. And see how it pops back. So what this is doing is, as it plays, it's not just going around the circle like a regular music box would. These 3 rows are all one note. And what happens is, as the cob plays, the wheel moves sideways just a little bit, so they can actually fit in a longer row by coiling the rows next to each other. So the song will go around 3 times and then click and reset. which means you can get an extremely long song out of one tiny little rotation because you're using the rotation 3 times for the note. That was something super cool to find out. That's pretty much going to be it for part 2. I've learned about everything I need to know, and I learned even more thinking about it after I filmed this during the editing. Part 3 is going to be a great one because I'm finally going to be able to share with you guys everything that I've learned and how I understand this and how I understand about the organ functioning, really. Thanks for watching so much. Please like, comment, or subscribe. I appreciate y'all being here, and I hope you're enjoying this project as much as I am. Hope to see you soon. I hope you're doing well. God bless, and we'll see you in part 3.